We're back. Sorry about skipping a day yesterday. Life just piled up, and putting together a devotional thought was one too many things. But I'm all caught up now, and we will have a better news daily today and tomorrow, Friday. So we're in 1 Corinthians today, which is a letter from Paul that is just packed with great content. There are a lot of great practical teachings about how to live in the world as a follower of Jesus. There's some amazing theology about the resurrection in chapter 15. There's the famous love chapter in 1 Corinthians 13. And boy, I could just read that to you and then tell you to think about it. And then that would be a great devotional thought right there. But where we're going to focus today is in the chapter before the love chapter, 1 Corinthians 12. Paul starts and ends this chapter talking about spiritual gifts, which is another great topic to explore. But where we're going to look is in the middle of the chapter with a metaphor that Paul just loves to use. So this past Sabbath, I preached a sermon at my church called What Church Is and Isn't. And in the sermon, I outlined three things that I believe church is at its core and three things that it isn't. The three things that I talked about that I believe church is were family, mission, and discipleship. You can watch the full sermon here on this channel to hear me discuss those things in full. But I bring up the sermon here and now because there was a fourth thing that church is that I had to cut for time. But it's what Paul is going to talk about here. So hey, I still get to talk about it. Church is a body. A body. This is a metaphor that Paul loves to use in his writings, and 1 Corinthians 12 is his longest discussion of this word picture. We'll start in verse 12. Just as a body, though one, has many parts, but all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. For we were all baptized by one Spirit so as to form one body, whether Jews or Gentiles, slave or free. And we were all given the one Spirit to drink. Even so, the body is not made up of one part, but of many. Okay, so we're going to keep reading what Paul says, but let me tell you why I love this metaphor for the church. This word picture captures both the unity of the church and the diversity of the church all at once. So like Paul says there in verse 13, all kinds of people are baptized into Jesus to make up one body. The church isn't fractured into tribes, but each person does fulfill a unique role. And this is what he explores next. Now, if the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. And if the ear should say, well, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? You can just sense Paul giggling to himself by this point. And his point is important, right? Would you want a church where everyone is a worship leader? No. Would you want a church where everyone's a pastor? No, what a nightmare that would be. Paul goes on, but in fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body. Okay, wow. Don't miss that verse there, verse 18. Highlight it in your own Bible if you want to. God placed the parts in the body just as he wanted them to be. So catch the picture so far. You are part of the body of Christ. You aren't on an island isolated from everyone else, nor are you only part of a small local community. No, you are joined with all true believers in Jesus from all walks of life. But furthermore, you also have a function to play. You aren't just a passive spectator in the church. You're called to be an active participant, in some way fulfilling the mission of the church. And that role is significant, even if you don't think it is. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. And the parts that we think are less honorable, we treat with special honor. So not only is everyone necessary, but Paul goes as far to say that it's the less noticeable roles that are the most important and honorable. Wow. Now, Paul will go on to say more in this chapter, but for the sake of a video this short, we'll just stop here. We've got plenty to chew on. What I want you to realize today is that you are needed in the body of Christ. You have a function, a role, a part to play in the ongoing story of what Jesus is doing in this world. There was an illustration I heard once that I really liked about someone's baby who was trying to crawl, but his arms didn't really work yet. So this baby would plant his face on the ground, stick his behind in the air, and then kick. He'd face scoot around the floor, which looked ridiculous, but it kind of worked. Now, could he get around this way? Sure, but it's very exhausting. He's trying to make his head do what his arms are built to do. And this is what can happen in the body of Christ. You have some people who are trying to work outside their function, outside of their giftedness. And can they do it? Sure, but they're exhausting themselves along the way. And then there are other people who aren't fulfilling their role, whether that's because they've been crowded out by others, or they're being lazy, or that they've just never thought that they had a part to play. But we all do. This goes back to the unity and diversity thing again. You're called to fulfill a unique function, but to do that work in harmony with everyone else, so that the body of Christ as a whole can accomplish its mission. So what's your role? And please, let's think about this beyond the scope of just the local church and the Sabbath program. When we talk about spiritual gifts and someone's role in the body of Christ, we often make it too small. We think about it only in terms of what ministry position can you fill in our local church? Or what talents do you have that we could use to make the Sabbath program even better? Now, is that a potential place where you might find a role in furthering the work of Jesus? Of course, absolutely. But it's not the only place. Your role might be to heal people, physically or emotionally. Your role might be to advocate for justice. Maybe your role is to create things of beauty in some form of artistic expression. Maybe your role is to build bridges between your church and your community. Your role could be to educate kids, or to serve those in need, or to just be in your current job, building relationships with your coworkers and sharing Jesus with them. I don't know what it is, but here's my question I want you to think about. Where are you needed in the church? Notice the question is not, where can you help out in the church? It's, where are you needed in the church? Because make no mistake, you are needed. You might be needed in your local congregation, helping with the ministry there. You might be needed in your larger community. Maybe it's both. But you have a certain set of gifts and passions and connections and experiences that equip and empower you to do the work of Jesus in a particular way. And there is no lesser role amongst church members. There is no function that is insignificant. If the Bible is a testament of anything, it is that God can do a lot with a little. So what can you offer him? I encourage you to prayerfully think about this question. And then once you've pinpointed what it might be, I challenge you to do something about that. Don't just make this an intellectual exercise. Take a step. Big or small, doesn't matter. Just start heading in the direction that you sense that God is leading you. And I think as you do that, you will find that God will bless. I'm going to hit the randomizer for tomorrow. Quick plug again, there's a week of prayer for KSDA elementary age kids. If you've got kids at home who need something to watch, check out our church Facebook page. We've been linking those videos there as well. One last video for this week will be from the book of Hebrews tomorrow. And then we'll have a Sabbath live stream where Pastor Kevin will be doing a sermon that Sabbath morning at 11. So we have a weekend of content coming up for you. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.